Hello everybody, welcome back to Maya in Minutes series where we go over different tips, tricks, and functions that you can do in Maya. Today we are going to be going over input nodes, what they are, what they do to objects, and how you can manipulate them. So input nodes are the history of different transformations and attributes that you apply to an object in your 3D space in Maya. To illustrate what we're going to be looking at, we're going to go ahead and just create a basic cube to start off. I'm going to focus in on it with F. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Control B to bevel it really quick. Going to add in some information just to change up our object a little bit. And now we have some just basic transformations done onto our object. Now the first thing that you'll see when you do a lot of operations in Maya is you'll usually have this little pop-up window come up that gives you a little bit of quick options that are usually the ones that you manipulate when you are doing these operations. So for beveling, most of the time you're going to be worrying about how much you're going to bevel the object with your fragments or with your fractions. Change how many segments you can bevel in, change whether it's coming in or out, whether it's going to chamfer, etc., etc. However, if we go over to our channel box layer editor tab here, you can see that there is under our input tab this poly bevel 1 option. If I go ahead and click on it, you'll see all the different options that I have in this little pop-up window are here, along with all the other options that are available with beveling. So here you can play along with a lot of these different channels and see what they do with them, or see what they do to the object. They don't always do the most clear visible things, but playing around with them gives you a lot of different types of options, or gives you a lot more control over how you can manipulate your object here. So for instance, you can turn off n-gons, tolerance or not. You can change how it's rendered with your smoothing here. You can change the basic options that you have here in your pop-up window, etc., etc. Now, all of these options are also manipulatable and available in your attribute editor as well. If we go ahead and click on our attribute editor tab, you'll see that a poly bevel 1 tab is now open in our attribute editor. And here you can manipulate all those same variables that you were working with. Here they're a little bit easier to visualize with these sliders here. But all of those different options that we saw in our channel box editor are here in our attribute editor. And as you can see, if I manipulate them here in my attribute editor, it changes those values in my channel box editor as well. Now, input nodes are kind of the basis of how we do all of our editing of 3D objects in Maya. It is somewhat similar to Blender's modifiers, but it does distinguish itself from modifiers in a couple different ways. For one, Blender modifiers are somewhat independent of the 3D object. What that means is that you can apply a modifier, change the way that it's applied in the stack, changes visualization, change different values of it without necessarily changing anything on the 3D object until you bake them onto the 3D object. Here, our input nodes all kind of build up upon each other. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if I was to go ahead and let's just say we extrude this face here, and then I go back into object mode, you can see that there has been an extrude face input node that has been added onto my object here. If I click on it, you see that there's all of these different options that I can work with. But this node is taking information and is based and built off of the information from this poly bevel node here. I can't really move this bevel node to happen after this extrude node. I can't really delete this bevel node here. If I go to edit, delete node, I can't delete that node without losing all the information on my extrude node here. So it kind of limits itself in terms of how you want to change the way that different transformations apply. However, there are some things that I think are a little bit more powerful than it. For one, all of these different options here are individually manipulatable and individually keyable. So if I was to go to my Translate X node here and I right click on it, I can hit key selected, move it over to somewhere else in my timeline, move it up a couple here, and animate that position there. And all of these different variables here, all of these different channels are keyable and animatable. So that is one of the very powerful things that I can work with in my input nodes here. Because input nodes are a type of history information, this can do a lot to store the information on your object, but it can also bog down your object a lot. For little simple objects like this, it's not going to do too much. But if I wanted to bake all this information onto the object and have it sort of as a new instance, we're going to be using our delete history option a lot. There are a couple of different ways that you can delete history. The first one is if you are under your polymodeling tab and you go over here to this little icon that looks like a clock with a couple of different dashes under it. This will give you the option to hotkey the delete or delete history. If I click that, you can see all the different input nodes have now disappeared. I can go to edit in my channel box editor, go to delete history, and it'll delete all the history nodes here. I can also, with this object selected, go to edit, delete by type, history. And you'll also see when I go to edit, delete by type, you'll see the Alt-Shift-D here. This is the hotkey for deleting history. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get rid of all these nodes here. Again, for simple objects like this, it's not usually going to matter too much. But if you are doing something like topology or a lot of different transformations and extrusions on your object, and you're finding that your Maya is being really slow or really laggy, go ahead and delete history and you'll get rid of a lot of those extra nodes. You won't be able to go back and manipulate those transformations, but you will free up a lot of the information that has been processing all of these different history nodes here. All right, so that's just a brief explanation of what input nodes are in Maya. I hope this was helpful for you guys. And until next time, see ya.